All right, ladies and gentlemen, now joining us on the 182 News podcast. I am so stoked for this interview. You are the earliest friend, kind of co-worker, leader of Blink at the time, going back to 1993, 1994. You're the earliest person to know Blink that I've had on the podcast. So I'm so stoked for this. This is Rob Kaechele, former ASB director at Poway High, still works there in a film and audio type of position. Rob, what's happening, man? So stoked to have you on the pod.
Yeah, stoked to be here. This is gonna be fun. I love the opportunity to talk about these guys. I love them. I'm loyal to them. I'm proud of them, and yeah, I'd love to fill in a lot of gaps and talk about some stories that happened in the beginnings, and yeah, and talk shop. I'm a firm collector of vinyl and records, and so we've got some stuff to talk about when it comes to music and collectibles, but more importantly, some really crazy things that happened right at the very beginning of them playing.
Yeah, it's really cool. And the way that you and I connected is actually pretty wild. You actually stumbled across my YouTube page, which is crazy,
Yeah.
reached out to me, and then, gosh, we had like a 2-hour phone call just shooting the shit, talking about the early days of Blink. And it took about 20 minutes for you and I both to be like, I think we should do a podcast about this.
Yeah. There's some good stories, man. There's some really good things happening here.
You've got some good stories, and like I said, I've had people on. I've had Rick DeVoe on, who started late '94. I've had a good friend of mine, Davy Jones, who was a hardcore Blink fan from '95 onward. So I've got kind of those years covered, but I hadn't had anybody from that 1993, 1994 time period. And when I got
Monkeys, isn't he?
He's different Davy Jones.
No, you know what's funny is that was David Bowie's original name too, by the way.
Oh,
He changed it because of the guy from the Monkeys. But anyway, go on. So this is what we're going to do the whole time.
I did not know that. I learned so much talking to you, but it's cool because, you've got some stories here about the early days that no one has heard. And really a lot of folks from that time period just aren't around or don't come forward or whatever. So, when you said you were down to do the pod, I was like, man, this is going to be a special treat for us Blink nerds because you've got some early stories here. To tee us off, I want to get a little bit of background on how you ended up at Poway High as far as like a career choice. My understanding is you were in the music industry in some capacity. So kind of lead us into what you were doing before that and how you ended up at this role at Poway.
Sure. Okay, cool. Yeah. So I went through college DJing a bunch. I was always a music collector, always really into music since I was a kid. And it was a big thing for me. And so going through high school and into college, I was working for record stores and like Tower Records and Licorice Pizza and a place called Record Shop and all kinds of really cool little record stores. And then I got a job doing work through Uni Distribution, which is Universal, and they own MCA Records, Geffen, GRP Jazz, MCA Nashville, Interscope. We did a lot of promotions and product push and point of purchase displays at all the record stores. So when you see all those little displays, or you used to, when you used to go into record stores and they had an artist displayed, people that worked with the label would set up like little, I wouldn't say they were little, I would say they were like 3 by 3 foot section areas inside of a record store of flats and posters. And, like for Nirvana, we had like a hanging baby, aerial thing that kind of floated around the air, some cool stuff. So we'd get all that set up and point of purchase displays. And when we liked bands, when I was into a band, I would push them in San Diego, like the band Live or the band Teenage Fan Club that was big in Canada, but they weren't big here. So it was like, oh, they're really nice guys. I'm going to make sure that they get a point of purchase display. And, we try to push a lot of extra product in at Tower, right as soon as you walk in the door, there's a display right there. So, when a band is nice and cool, I always came from the background of I can't wait to push them. I can't wait to get behind them. And, I did that for a number of years through college. And then one of my last backstage passes that we worked was for Guns N' Roses. And I was like, ooh, it south really quick. It wasn't a healthy one. And I had a story with some of my friends. I'm like, man, if I'm going to go forward in this industry, I'm going to end up working in LA where I wasn't really happy to go. I wanted to stay in San Diego. And I was thinking, if I have kids 10 years down the road and I got to tell them the stories about what just happened at this backstage pass, like this isn't going to be a healthy thing, you know? Like I just, Humphreys is a local jazz venue. And so we were doing a lot of backstage passes and shows for GRP jazz artists. And there was like 4 a week. I was just like, oh man, I don't want to do this anymore. Like I want to work with bands that I love and music that I love, and working for a label, you basically have to spread it out amongst everything. So I was ready for a new occupation, and a close friend, this guy Brendan Staples, had an epiphany talk with me and said, why don't you be a teacher? And I'm like, I would have been the last guy you would have thought would go back to a high school, right? But it all made sense because, you know, I had a psychology and marketing background, and I was like, you know, I would love to do it if I was working with older students. And he said, go back to the high school you worked at. So I did, loved it, got into the music thing of it. And then a job opportunity came up at Poway High School when I was in the midst of going through the whole teaching credential thing. And it was an ASB director position, which is you're in charge of the entire school's culture and school activities and all the dances and the proms and, you know, things to make students connect to a school. And you work with the leadership council of the school. So I'm like, wow, this could be really cool. This could be like the best hybrid of teaching and music and sociology and, you know, affecting a community. Like I was really excited about that whole idea. So interviewed numerous times, got the job. I was the youngest ASB director hired in any of the schools in San Diego, North County. I was 23 at the time, and, which was cool. But I went in with a theory of, you know, students are disconnected a bit from school. Like school is school, and you know, that's how I felt. And music and life outside of school is just something else. And I was like, what if you could just bring all that together? How cool would that be, you know? So one of the aspects of the many that we did was we wanted to bring bands to the school twice a month. So it would either be bigger bands in the quad or smaller bands in the little theater. And, you know, we kind of kicked that off into gear. And this girl that was my ASB class president at the time, Anna Massengill, was really close friends with Tom. I don't know if romantically, but because I know he was dating his previous wife, and she was a cheerleader at Poway High School. But anyway, not my business.
Right.
He was really excited to have them play at Poway High School. And I was like, that's cool, but I've got like a box full of 12 cassettes of these other bands that were all excited to come and play. And I had a bunch of connections with artists from smaller labels that wanted to have high school gigs and things like that. And so I'm like, we could do this possibly, but let's get something from them. So she got a cassette from him, the Buddha cassette. That's where I got that first Buddha cassette. And yeah, and then from there, Tom came in and he's like, hey, we really want to play, and what can we do to get on there? And, you know, I was like, well, you know, he's really motivated. He was a very motivated guy. And I think he was working for a concrete trucking company gig at the time, and he had just stopped working for one of our swim and tennis clubs in the community, where basically you sit and check people in and play guitar all night. I'm sure he got some good practice on his guitar after a bit from doing that. And yeah, he was super excited. Like, we want to play in the quad. And I'm like, well, here's the thing. So you got to think this is 93, 94 zone, and schools are a little bit worried about mosh pits, right? Like mosh pits were just starting to become a thing. Like, you got to understand that kind of era and time. Like, it was a hot thing for students to jump up in the, you know, do what we know as mosh pitting. So, but I was trying to explain to the administration, I'm like, this isn't going to happen. Like, it's the middle of the day. It's our quad. Everyone's looking at everyone. They're not going to be jumping all over each other and, you know, punching each other in the face. It's not going to happen. And I had a contract with all, you know, embedded into this, like, if anything becomes unrested amongst the groups, you got to stop the music. And we never had to do that. Everyone was super cool. So anyway, Tom was like, we'd love to do this. And I said, well, here's how we're going to do it. So we either had a sound system that we would bring in from this guy, Don from DSL, who Blink later went to record in their studio, his studio with him. But I was using him as a sound tech guy and a live music guy. And so I could pay him $300 and he'd bring out a full live PA, or I'd offer to the bands if they had their own live PA. I'm like, you guys could pocket $300. And Tom was like, we'll pocket $300. And I'm like, good, you must have a good PA. And when they came, and it was our first gig that we did in the quad, we did a couple others inside of our little theater, but this is the first one we did in our quad, which means, it's open to everybody and it's a bigger gig. They didn't bring a live PA. They brought their amps and sang through his amp. And so that was brutal, because the drums were really loud and Mark's bass sounded pretty good, but Tom was just like, it was distorted through he's singing through his amp. And I'm like, God, you guys needed $300 pretty bad, didn't you?
Yeah. So, and I'm trying to visualize, like, what's a quad? Like, I didn't have that at my school. Is this like an open room, a courtyard? Like, how big is it?
So the last gig we did at Poway High Live was Mark was managing this band, River Phoenix, if you could see it.
Yeah, nice poster.
Yeah, and this ended up being their tour poster. So they played a gig in our quad where Mark was managing them. And the last gig I did as the ASB director in '99, River Phoenix comes and plays. And so they played in our quad, and then they ended up doing their tour posters in our quad. So that is our quad, and that's the background of our quad in the background. And then there's all kinds of small pictures down below it.
Interesting.
But they decided to do with the tour. My students popped a funny picture of another girl right there, but it's funny.
That's funny.
Yeah, but it's our cheerleaders behind these guys, which was kind of comical. And yeah, the quad is just an open air little arena, which is really cool. Actually, it was really cool. Now it's all filled in, so it doesn't look like anything like it did before. It's just a big flat concrete area, but it used to be this kind of grassy knoll enclave, and then it had a natural stage up above, which was really cool.
So timeline wise, when was this? I mean, you signed Blink to play at the quad, which is crazy.
What I love about your podcast, dude, is you are particular about chronological order and time. And so here it is. I laminated a bunch of this stuff way back in the day. I probably shouldn't have, but so it's got a little gloss to it. But this is Tom filling out the band contract.
Oh my gosh.
Quad, which would be November 22, 94.
Wow.
So yeah, and Anna Massengill right there. That's her little signature right there. She was, at the time, my ASB class president. She was a class president.
Man, that's crazy. So when you first met Tom, because again, you said I'm picky about chronological order and such. When did you start in 93? Like, did you start August 93?
So it'd be August 93 to the year of 94.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking about Tom. The story has it, Tom got kicked out of Poway in January 1992. So spring semester, he transfers to Rancho Bernardo. Legend has it, he joins a group of friends that includes Ann Hoppus. Mark moves back around August 92. And I think Tom goes back to Poway then for the semester, and Blink is formed. So you're pretty early there. You're on they've got that next semester, 93, and then you're right there the semester after that, which is pretty wild. So when you first meet Tom and he walks into your office or whatever, was there anything like, did he stick out to you? Like, was he just a funny, goofy dude, or you could just tell that he was super like dead set on this band thing? Like, all these years later, thinking back, like, did you see something in him early on, or was he just another student?
He wasn't goofy. He was straight up one of the nicest guys. He's such a nice guy. No, what I noticed right away, I noticed stupid things, actually. I noticed he had these really cool Levi's on, and he cuffed them just right. Like they were torn off or cut off at the bottom and then flipped up. And I'm like, dude, you got style. Like he had a cool style. He just carried himself well. Like I liked, not, I'm particular. I kind of come from a mod background. Like when I was in high school, I was into the Specials and Madness and all these ska bands and a little bit of punk rock edge and a lot of new wave edge and really fun stuff. And so I like that mod style. I like the, the Fred Perry shirts and the Sambas, which he's wearing now, kind of thing. But Doc Martens and fun stuff like that. So he had a stick together, man. He had a good look. He was so kind and so cool, and he was hungry. So this is a thing that I will say about Blink early on, is the tenacity, like just being tenacious about things. And again, I came from a background where I worked at a label where when I liked some band, when they weren't around, I was promoting them and I was doing work for them, and I was happy to spread the good word about them. So, it's when a band isn't humble and isn't kind-hearted and isn't cool, you tend to not cheer for them as the underdog. And, Blink was the underdog. Let me back up a little bit on your story there. So we don't need to have any legends. I'll give you the actual facts. So here's the fact.
Let's get it.
Let's get it. So Tom walked in with some buddies to a basketball game at the Poway High gym, and they were drinking, and they had little breathalyzers on their flashlights at the time. So Tom was pulled aside, got busted for that. Anytime you got busted for something like that, you got what was called an inter-district transfer, and it would happen for one semester. So he got inter-district transferred to the very closest high school to us, which is like 3 miles away, and that was Rancho Bernardo High School. So he meets Mark's sister, and they can give you all the details from that. That's all there, and whatever happens from there, and how he forms the band. But Mark, what's funny is I just picked up a contract here. I won't share the address because I think his mom still lives there. But over here in Poway, it's actually Penasquitos, where he lives. So Mark actually lived like in the Rancho Bernardo and Poway area. He was right in between that space. Scott Rayner, who was their drummer at the time, also was from Poway and then went to Rancho Bernardo. And I thought Abraxas, which is a continuation school, but I can't be sure about that. So I don't want to say anything. I was asking Wade Yeoman, who's a friend of mine, who's the drummer for Unwritten Law, who the band Blink. So at the time when I was working with Tom, we haven't gotten to this piece yet, but from the time when I was working with Tom, he was like, dude, Unwritten Law, like they're on Red Eye Records, and they made the Blue Room, and it's on a CD. It was all these great things that they were like, oh, this is so awesome. And
yeah,
they were the band to emulate. But like I said before, when a band is progressively going along, when they're a band that is humble, you get behind them. When there's a band that's a little cocky, people tend to want to knock them off their pedestal a little bit. And I love Unwritten Law. I think they have amazing talent. Scott's great. Wade is amazing. Rob Brewer, their original guitarist, was amazing. I mean, those guys just killed it. But they had a bit of the gangster vibe going on, and Blink didn't. Blink had the make fun of each other vibe going on, and so they were never building themselves higher than anybody around them, and it worked. I mean, it really worked well for them. Like, coming from a marketing perspective and a record label, I'm like, you guys got this down, man. Like, you're smart. And I don't know that this is the thing, Ryan, like you can either plan this stuff out and it will eventually come across contrived, or you just be who you are and people feel it, and the timing is right and the things happen right and you hit the right people, and if you're constantly pounding the pavement, which those guys were, something's gonna break. And it just, man, it's like the stars align. When the stars align, these things happen. But the stars can align and you're not in alignment, and it's not going to happen for you. Yeah. Fortunately, Tom and Mark, and always their drummers, were always their silent partners. Like even Travis in the beginning was really quiet, so, but always their silent partners. And these guys just knew how to do it. Like, they were very smart about what they were doing, but they weren't contrived. Like, they were naturally guys you wanted to get behind. Like, Mark was total rock star and super cool. Like, super cool. And Tom in the beginning, I loved him. Like, Tom is an amazing guy. Like, so many people admire him for what he does and what he's doing, and he gets it. Like, he gets it. So let's talk about some of that early stuff as we're building some things, because it was pretty interesting.
Yeah. Do you remember the first time that that he shared like a demo tape with you, or that you heard Blink? Was it that Buddha cassette? Because Buddha cassette, time frame wise, is January 1994 for context. So do you remember the first time you heard it?
Yeah, the first time I heard it, Anna Massengill gave it to me. So she was trying to promote them, and then weeks later, Tom walked into my office and was like, "Hey, I want to give you more stuff. We just don't have any other stuff." And I said, "Well, you know, I just started working for when I was working for a record label. I said, bands have promo packs." He's like, "What's a promo pack?" Oh, all right. I said, if you want to start somewhere, I go, let's start building a promo pack. And so I showed him. I want to say it was Teenage Fan Club. I had a bunch of promo packs of bands, right? And it was like not your established bands like your Nirvana or Guns N' Roses or Aerosmith. It was like other bands that were smaller on the label that I'd worked for. And so it was like packs that were like, you know, here's who the band is. So it would start with a bio. Like you need a page that's a whole bio about the band, and then pictures about the band, and then flyer montages of places you played and interviews you've done. And remember, this is 94. So this is, now you do digital packs, you know what I mean? But back then it was like, well, all this is going to have to be on a packet of paper that you put in a folder and you hand off to somebody. And I said, you know, and if you have any t-shirt ideas or any sticker ideas, I go, let's put it together. So literally for like the next 6 months, Tom was piecing it all together. And I want to say this is the first one. The only person that's going to be able to tell you different is Tom. So this was a handwritten bio of the band that Tom wrote up for me because I was putting this together for him. This is pre-typewriter.
That's crazy, dude.
So at the top, it's got Tom's phone number, Mark's phone number, and their drummer at the time is Mike Kroll. So this is guy here.
Yeah, that tells me that's like late 94. So yeah, probably mid to late 94 you guys were working on that. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it would be mid, because this would be June-ish, because this is before I had them playing our quad. So I'm helping them build this stuff. And performances, all these different bands that they perform with, the Muffs, the Vandals, Rust, No Use for a Name, Sprung Monkey, Face to Face, Guttermouth. Like these were all cool San Diego edge punk bands, you know?
Yeah.
And then I love this stuff. Like, you got to hear this. This is cool stuff. So it's Meaningless Propaganda, which would be their bio, right? Average draw to monthly shows is 230 to 300 people.
Which is actually kind of solid being a band for a year and a half, you know?
Really solid. And I tend to think he was exaggerating it a little bit, just kind of, but he's good. He's good. He's doing it at this time. And then it says 1,000 albums sold in 9 months locally in San Diego. Not bad. Signed 3-album contract to Cargo Records. CD being made right now, and one day might be finished. So Cheshire Cat hadn't come out yet.
Wow.
This is great. We are not gay. He says this. I'm like, dude.
It was a different time back then.
Hand on a label, like, is this what you want? And fortunate for him, like, this works. But 94, you're like,
yeah,
a little on the edge. Okay, people bootleg our shirts, and rumor has it they're better than ours. Love it. Reviews in 360 Magazine and San Diego Source. Not available, but they were good reviews, I swear. And then labeled by San Diego promoters as fastest growing band in San Diego, although most immature.
That is hilarious.
Hilarious. And then at the bottom, it says, down here, it says actual write-ups and pro package by Cargo, not available yet. But when they are, they'll be sent to you first. So here's a quick, cheesy one for the time being, along with a few songs on our new album, not yet released. So that's along with this, Tom gave me that.
Oh my gosh.
So it's a cassette with, and I did listen to it, by the way, Ryan, and it does have some stuff on it that I haven't heard from them before. So what's interesting about this is, and I would rather talk to Tom and Mark and see what they'd want done with it. Maybe they want to burn it. I don't know. It's really their business. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but what's cool about this is Tom gave me a cassette of them in their rehearsal space. So they used to, like storage containers, like when people move out of their houses and they move their stuff into a storage facility.
Oh yeah.
There was one in Mira Mesa where they used to practice. and rehearse. And so part of this promo pack is them taking pictures of them in their space. Like that's them inside
Oh
of their space.
man, I've never seen that photo.
Oh, look at that. I'm gonna see if you can see that. It's glossy.
Oh man.
Mark's got a Teenage Fan Club t-shirt on. Is that weird?
That's a rad photo, dude. I've never seen that.
Yeah. So that's inside their space. This is them at Soma.
That kind of looks like one of those Carrie Key like blurry shots. That was a friend of theirs at that time.
Kind of cool stuff. Really smart. Let's see. Oh, okay. So let's get to the promo pack. So finally, after building this up with Tom, he's like, I got a promo pack for you. I go, let's see it. And so he put together a couple other things that we had put together. Like we montaged together a bunch of his flyers. He said he got a couple interviews. I said, print them out. And then I gave him one of the promo packs that I had. And so he put it together, dude. And he called it Future Proctologists of America.
No one has seen that, dude. That's amazing.
This is great. Yeah, this is great. So this
oh my gosh.
I had 2 or 3 of them, and I know I handed one off to my rep from MCA and Geffen. Like I had 2 key guys that I would hand stuff off to because they were like, what's the next hot band out of San Diego? I'm like, well, there's Blink, there's Unwritten Law, there was a couple other bands, ska bands that I was pushing at the time. So you know, this is it. Dude, you're gonna love this. So it's like a Buddha. It was the Buddha promo thing going on. Look at this.
Oh man, dude, that's like the most pristine early Blink sticker I've ever seen.
Still stuck in there. And it was like the promo about Cheshire Cat. And then it's interview with Mark at Denny's, transcribed.
Wow.
Got a bunch of Denny's interview stuff, more interview stuff, more interview stuff. Oh, check this out. So this is an early sticker idea. It's the Cheshire Cat Blink.
Oh my gosh, like with Alice in Wonderland theme.
Yeah.
That had to be Mark. That had to be Mark.
And then it had to be. And then this is drawn up. Like this, Tom drew up for it. Boom. Like drawn up.
That Skankin' Rabbit, man. That's still my favorite logo.
We didn't have it as a tattoo yet. So it was like, that's pretty cool. That same cassette thing going on. Or a sticker. Oh, now here's the trippy part. I want to say, and again, no one's going to be able to tell you this except for Tom or Mark, but I want to say this was their first sticker concept. Let me get this mess together.
Oh man, that's crazy.
That is super primitive looking.
That is, and it looks. I think it says Rainer. Did Scott draw that? Look at that.
Oh, dude, you did see that. Yeah, it does. It says Rainer down there. So that's Scott Rainer drawing that up.
And Scott drew like that original bunny they had on that Buddha era on those shirts and such. Like Scott drew that. So that's fucking crazy, dude.
That I didn't know. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Bunch of Soma shows that they played with Agent Orange and New Year's Eve. And more Soma shows. You know, these are just really cool, like punk rock posters, you know what I mean? Like punk rock flyers.
Yeah,
like
dude.
Fluff and Blink and Ghoulspin and Sprung Monkey and Blink and Drip Tank and the Muffs and Blink and Bucko 9. That was another band I was kind of trying to push, but they made their own way. Like they got onto a really good label and made way for San Diego. So that was the promo pack, dude. Like that was kind of an accomplishment to get that together and then get that out to people and then, you know, start to promote them.
That's crazy.
So Tom, I'm pushing them to get a CD like in my hands. I go, Tom, I can't really push anything with a label until, you know, I can't give them the Buddha cassette. Like I'm not going to give them a cassette. Cassettes, like if you're a band that's making it, you've put out a CD. Like Unwritten Law put out Blue Room, right? So Blue Room is like, it's the mark. They got signed onto Red Eye Records, and for any Poway bands, they're like, dude, Unwritten Law. They're the ones that are popping. They're the ones that are gonna break through. And we had something in the water in Poway because there was bands starting to cycle and circulate and create and make waves. And so Blink. So Tom gives me a cassette, a Blink, or excuse me, not a cassette. Sorry. gives me the CD of Cheshire Cat, and I want to say this was the day after he got his box of promos from the label. So he handed me the Blink.
Man.
He handed me 5 of these. And that was like, so it's like the early one with the promo cuts and that whole thing.
So sick.
Which is really cool. And I loved it. Like, it's really good. And I handed out 4 of them. I think I sent one over to for sure I sent one to Steve West, who was a good friend of mine that worked for 91X. I gave one to one of my label partners, and then I gave one to my MCA rep and my Geffen rep. So I handed out 4 of them, and I kept one. Yeah. So here's the interesting thing. Like, I mean, coincidence or not, they got signed to MCA. I didn't do that. You know, Rick DeVoe can tell you, like, I'm sure that was their choice, and they went and shopped artists and people. But I can tell you this, like, months before they went and shopped, there was people like myself that were planting seeds at different labels, and I planted seeds with my reps at MCA. So certainly their name was on the radar in the MCA office, in the Geffen office. People knew, like, us as label reps that had previously worked for those labels, when we sent them stuff and it was whatever was hot in San Diego, they were listening to it. It wasn't like, oh, we're going to throw it in the box of CDs and cassettes, get to it another time. It was like, we're going to listen to it. So they were being listened to. And I promise you, like, it's a timing thing, right? Like, Seattle was just starting to die off, and the labels were all looking for a new place to find, you know, like, where's the next set of all these bands coming from? And it was the ska punk scene in San Diego that was popping. Like, it was popping. And so, you know, a lot of other small bands in San Diego were starting to, like, get excited, like, oh my God, if they could do it, we could do it. And it was happening.
When you heard that Buddha cassette, you know, did you hear something special? I mean, obviously you've been around music. You're a seasoned vet with tons of rad bands. Did you hear something special, as gnarly and as raw as that tape is? And it's a demo. To this day, they still call it that. But did they stick out to you at that point?
No.
Not at all?
No. And the crazy thing is, I had a box full of other, you know, like 12 other bands and cassettes and things going on. You know, like we had Blacksmith Union, and but they weren't punk rock. And we had just a bunch of other band cassettes that were going on, and I'm like, they're good, and it's like this, but I mean, there was a few tracks on there that I thought I liked a lot, and of course I was listening to the students that were in my ASB council, and they were excited about Blink. They were also excited about, there was another band that was local from Poway High School called Open Fast, and they were kind of like the competing band with Blink. Like, Open Fast would play at some shows at Soma with Blink, and they were kind of in competition a little bit, you know, like kind of pushing it. Later, Open Fast ended up being Area 51, and Area 51 blew up really good. So did Pivot. Pivot was another one of those bands, and Chris Lewis, who's now in Unwritten Law, the guitarist for Unwritten Law, was in Pivot. I had all these guys. Let me see if I found this stuff the other day. Like, when I had these bands playing our quad, we would also, we had what was called a DAT recorder. So I wish I would have done this for Blink, but I wasn't prepared for this at that time because they were our first band. But soon after, I'm like, man, we're getting a lot of really cool bands. We should be recording all this. So, like, Pivot came out with their CD, right? We ended up doing this is funny. We ended up doing Pivot at Poway High School, and we made it a live set. We called it Sausage Party. You know why? Because we did the senior breakfast and we served sausages. So they thought it'd be funny to be like,
oh my gosh.
Party. Yeah.
So when they play at the quad, though, so I mean, you get Buddha early 94. It's okay, but it doesn't stick out. They play the quad November 94. At that point, you know, with as shitty as their live performance was, don't even have a PA. But was there still something special or just unique about them at that time that just made them stick out?
They were rising to the surface for sure, like, quickly. People were getting behind them. People were excited about them. Eminem was coming out. Like there was tracks that were coming out that people were buzzing about. What's funny is, like, on that cassette, there was a song called Toast and Bananas. Yeah. And Anna's like, I think that song's about me because I'm Anna Banana. And I'm like, it's kind of cool, you know? And then there was the legend of My Pet Sally, right?
Yeah, with like the lady who worked there.
Oof. So Sally was notoriously, we got to say this kindly. Sally wore shorts that were really tight all the time.
Mm.
Sally was a bigger gal, and so depending upon what angle you came up at Sally, you got kind of an interesting shot of Sally. And so she made an impression that I can understand why the song may have gotten him impressed. I'm guessing. I mean, Tom later goes, "No, that's about my salamander." I don't know. I think it was about Sally because Sally was like this notorious person I think students would love to make fun of and have fun with. And she's that gal. So
Gotcha.
So anyway, stuff was coming off of that cassette that we were all kind of connecting to, and we're like, oh, this is really cool, and wow, how cool would this be if you get played on 91X? And so my buddy Steve West that worked for 91X, he was more of the 80s nostalgia, but Mike Halloran was also the program director there, and Mike was a leader. If you grew up in San Diego, anytime you heard a band break or something pop or happen, Mike was somehow behind it. He has the Midas touch. Like if I was a label owner, he'd be the first guy I'd hire and have as the tastemaker, the gatekeeper.
Wow.
I'd have him. There's no doubt in my mind the guy has magical touch, and he lives and breathes music, and there's no one else like him. My hat's off to him, because I think with his energy and his excitement about San Diego pride and getting behind Blink, he was one of the first to pop them and bust them and get behind them. And he had an opportunity to bust a lot of bands. He could have busted Unwritten Law, and Unwritten Law never got that window of light that Blink ended up getting.
Yeah, when I had Rick DeVoe on the pod, he said that Mike Halloran like broke Blink on 91X with that Eminem song. Like just gave so much love to him and was so appreciative of him doing that. Like just a fucking legend.
Well, and this is pre Damn It. So like if you're gonna play any of those bands, usually those bands go on local only shows that happen on like Sunday night at midnight, hard to, you're not getting the exposure, but he's playing them in prime time. And I'm like, what? Like something's happening here. And I'm promising you, like, it's also this energy of all the labels buzzing San Diego for new acts, and the radio stations work hand in hand with the labels and get buzz behind them. And so all of this stuff is happening. It's synergetic. It's happening. Like it's popping. And these guys are just moving right along and doing what they do. And it's pretty amazing to watch like how the energy started to move. And then as soon as MTV got a hold of these guys and the video popped out, I can't remember what video it was, but as soon as that popped, boom. Yeah. It's night and day. I saw the same thing happen for Nirvana when we had Nirvana on our label, and I had that album to promote and get behind, and we were like, wow, this is a killer album. But man, when that video of Smells Like Teen Spirit went down on MTV, it was like, holy shit.
Did you help with that promo?
Help how? I mean, there's that was like, were you involved in World War II? Did you start World War II by being part of it? Holy shit. Like that thing went down, and it was like, boom. I mean, dude, so this is a side tangent from Blink, but I was in the parking lot, and this was like a week after Nirvana blew up. And we were promoting the concert. They were playing with, listen to this lineup, Pearl Jam, right before their album busted, was the warm-up act. Nirvana, actually before all of them, I think the band Live was on before them. I can't remember. But anyway, it was Pearl Jam, Nirvana, Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Oh my God.
Holy shit. What an amazing show. And I had all these posters of Nirvana. They did a spoof promo poster of all three of them floating in the pool like the little kid does, naked, but they weren't naked. But it's all three of them floating in the pool, like in a similar fashion. And I was just handing those things out left and right, like all out in the parking lot, just going, yeah, this is so awesome. People were going nuts.
Wow.
I mean, it was mayhem. So when a band, when the lid gets lifted and the vacuum goes and it blows up, you're like, wow, this is going to be their 15 minutes of fame. This is going to blow up. And of course, Nirvana just kept going with it, and Blink has kept going with it. They kept their head. They know what they're doing, man. They knew how to do it and kept doing it.
So Cheshire Cat, I mean, it drops 3 months after you had him in the quad, which is wild. So when Tom hands you that CD, compared to Buddha, were you like, oh shit, like they've got a CD, this is next level shit, this is way catchier, like they're really honing in on this?
Oh yeah.
Like, how'd you feel about it when you heard Cheshire Cat for the first time?
I was super excited. So Carousel was a mind blower. That was a rock and roll track. I mean, that was super punk rock. M&M's, everyone was behind that. Yeah, and a bunch of others on here. They were just Benoit balls. I mean, it depends. Like they had the best. They had the best pokes at everything. And the dude on the back, it's like, that's messed up. They don't care, And like, who would pick a cat for the front? Like in Cheshire Cat, I'm actually curious. Like, how did they come up with that?
It's from a calendar. So that cat picture is from a calendar that I think Tom saw at work or something, and they modified it just enough to like not get sued. Basically, like it's photoshopped, obviously the eyes and such.
Yeah. Wow, it's just, but why pick the cat? I don't know. So that was so weird. I mean, I get the Dude Ranch album cover, which is hilarious. Like when you look at that and you look at those guys in the back and the front and all that stuff, it's like, that's them. That's them being just so goofy. And I'm like, oh, that's perfect. You know what I mean? But
yeah,
follow up.
I want to hit on like Mark and Scott real quick. Was Scott there when you were there? He's a few years behind. There's still confusion on when he was at Poway, when he was at RB. Like, did you have much interaction with Scott?
Not really. Really, I had interaction with Mark much more so later, and Tom completely in the beginning.
I gotcha.
Yeah, Scott, like I said, like their drummers were always quiet. And when I had them play out in the quad, by the way, and the sound was rough, at one point, the guys from Open Fast were like holding up signs saying Blink sucks. And don't do that, man. Like, but it's crowded, and so you can't get to them. And at one point, Scott busts up from the drums in between a song and was like, like, dude, you can't do that at high school. Like, I'm trying to make this happen like as much as possible. If you do this stuff, and they're going to be like, you can't do this at the high school. So I'm like, we're trying to find the happy medium, go down. And so, again, Scott wasn't making all the best decisions. He's a nice guy. He was really cool. But I didn't know much about him. I know that he went to Poway. I think he went to RB. I asked Wade Yeoman from Unwritten Law about that, and he confirmed that he went to RB. So Wade would know, because Wade started Unwritten Law, and Wade's a very proud Powegian. Still lives here in the area and is such a sweet guy and such a super nice guy. But he's legit punk rock. Like he legitimately, like he's involved in that band that I had recorded at our school. I'm jumping forward right now, but as of current, we have a recording studio at Poway High School, the only one of its kind in San Diego or North County. So I got loads of grant money. We invested it into a 5-room recording studio and full Toft recording board, analog recording board with Neve preamps and all kinds of great gear. And we had Eric Wilson from Sublime and Wade started a new band called Spray Allen. And so they came and recorded in our studio, and we recorded music for them, and they're pretty awesome. So how did I get to that with Wade?
Talking about just Scott.
Yeah. No. So with Scott and his happenings, the only thing I would hear about Scott is from Tom. Like at a later point, I was doing winter tours with a company called SWAT, Summer Winter Action Tours, and I was DJing for them. I was DJing some of these things and bringing students out for the ski tours and things like that. And they were asking me for bookings for bands and things like that. So at one point, I had Unwritten Law play. I had the guys from Pivot play. I've had all the local San Diego Poway bands play. I had Blink. But the Blink played with Goldfinger and God, who was Real Big Fish. And so when Tom got there and he was there, he was like, "Oh my God, Rob, you're there." So he gave me this, he's like, "Pick something out from our swag." And I'm like, "Really? Cool." And I think I grabbed like the most expensive item there. I was like, "Oh, that jacket." It was like that all-weather sweatshirt jacket thing. He's like, "Okay."
It's hilarious.
I still remember that. You know how you remember stupid, weird things? I still remember playing over the PA. I think it was a band named the Eels, and it was a song called Novocaine for the Soul. And that song, Before I Sputter Out. And I remember that song popping on, and Mark comes over and he's like singing it, and he's all into it. He's like, "Isn't this the greatest song you ever heard?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's kind of cool."
Hilarious.
Yeah, I love those guys, man. Like, they're just personalities. You just want to love them.
Yeah, and so I mean, so Cheshire Cat's out. They have to go through a name change, which is kind of funny. Do you remember hearing much about that as far as like chatter at the school or like adding the 182 or anything about that? I'm just curious.
So coming from a record label background, I know marketing is a really smart thing. And I also did a lot of interviews for KNSD. And so we did some stuff where we interviewed bands. I interviewed Billy Idol. I interviewed a bunch of other artists. And here's what I did and didn't like about interview people. I didn't like it when they asked the same cliche things, like, "Where did you get your band name?" And, "Where you're from Poway, how come?" It's like, what kind of question is that? You know what I mean? Some silly stuff. And I'm sure these guys got super tired of it after a while. So Blink, obviously, I thought, this is what I heard from Tom at one point, Mark was working out of Warehouse Records right over here in Rancho Bernardo. And I thought Tom had told me that a CD had come in from a band named Blink. It was an electronic act named Blink. And I think they claimed that they were from Ireland. I thought they were from Sweden or something like that, but I guess it's Ireland. And they realized, we're going to have to change our name if we're going to get signed to a label, because, there's going to be some problems with that. And from what I hear later, like, they were being threatened a lawsuit and so on and so forth for us. So who knows? I mean, that happens all the time. So they had to change their name. And so at one point, Tom had come to me and said, "Yeah, we were going to be like Blink Punk Rock. We were going to be Blink blah, blah." He named off a bunch of stuff because the name Blink was very classic for that era, because bands were naming themselves like Bush, like it was a simple one-word phrase. It was really catchy. And there was a lot of bands doing that, and they had a catchy name. Blink. It was genius. So to add something to it was like, but then to change your name is to lose the momentum that you got, so they had to add something to it. And what Tom had told me, he said Mark was watching Scarface, and the amount of times that Al Pacino says the F-bomb in it is 182 times. So that's how they got the 182. And I had heard ever since then a million different things. And people go, "Where do they get their name from?" And I go, "Well, where do you think they got it from?" And, "Well, I think it's the 18 and the 2, and it's the R and the B." And I go, "From Poway." So no, but you can think what you want, and so go for that. But I think it's like a bunch of silly things, right? But then everybody was like questioning it. I'm like, no, it's the amount of times Al Pacino says the F-bomb in Scarface. So I found an electronic press kit from them. This is great. We are going to affirm it and put it to rest and stick a gravestone in it right now. Here it is. You ready for this? Listen to this.
Let's hear it.
The name Blink-182 comes from San Diego. We were just called Blink for a long time. And then we changed it. There was another band called Blink from Ireland. And so we added the 182 because it's the number of times that Al Pacino says in the movie Scarface.
There you go.
So that's what Tom
straight up. Yeah, and I heard Tom tell me that straight up too before. And it's like one of those things that just kind of passes by, and you just go, well, do I want to keep telling it, or is it my place to tell people it? It's you know what I mean? It's like I don't want to. It's like knowing a magician and he shared with you his magic, and it's like, you don't want to start telling the world like, well, this is their magic trick. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, it's interesting that that's what Tom told you. I mean, I had heard that in the past at some point, and I think with the interviewers, like you said, they got so sick of being asked about it. I think they just started fucking with people and just coming up with random answers. But what needs to happen, I need to watch Scarface and I'll just have a little notepad and I'm gonna count every single time they say fuck. I mean, we can rule that out in or out very quickly. If it's 182, that'd be crazy.
Well, then that's accurate. Or maybe Mark miscounted. Who knows? You never know what the real deal
If
is.
it's in the
That's
ballpark.
Yeah, it's kind of like playing the Wizard of Oz and playing Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon to it and making that magical sound score match. Like it's legend, and then you got to try it out for yourself and check it. So I did record a little something just because I thought, well, this is gonna be a fun little thing to play. So in 2001, along with my theory that a band is going to get tired and they're also going to get smart about creating kind of urban legends about their name and about other things, but they're also going to get tired of being asked the same question. I'm certain that once they toured Europe, every Italian and Spanish and English, they all probably asked the same thing. Where did you get your name from? So they're probably like, oh. But, and what if we stop telling people it and then they're just satisfied with it and they move on past us, right? What if they start buzzing and talking about us? I think they're smart. I think they're very smart about this. So at one point, this is after they got on MTV and the gates open and the world blew up for them and they were on the Billboard Awards. And so I recorded a little snippet of this, 40 seconds worth, which shows where they're at now and what they say now, right?
Talk about how you created the name of your group. Okay, talk about it. I remember. Don't you? No. Okay. Stop it, people. Come on, work with us here. Skateboarding one night. I thought of the name Blink, and then this other band called Blink from Ireland came by and said, hey, we're going to sue you, Mr. Enough. And so we added a number, and the number is a secret. We can't tell you what that means. It's really just involves. We thought it was the number of the beast, but we were way off. Way off, by like. Talk about your music and how.
Yeah, it's the number of the beast. Yeah, that's really good. So, just smart. They're just smart. They're just smart. And so they've been smart ever since.
Urban legend. Yeah, it's urban legend at this point. All right, I'm gonna watch Scarface ASAP, and I'm counting them, and that'll just rule it out one way or the other. I love it. So they changed their name, and then I'm very curious about your perspective on this next part. So they signed to MCA, and then Dude Ranch, and then Damn It comes out, that video, they're blowing up. I hear from so many people in that area and in that scene that selling out thing was very real. Like there were people shitting on Blink at the time, and I'm sure it bummed them out in some capacity, but I'm curious, was that real? Like, did you feel that? Were you stoked for him? It sounded like you were kind of planting that seed with MCA anyway, but what's your perspective on that?
So you've got two things going on at that time. You've got legit punk bands from the late 70s, early 80s, and then late 80s. And all of those punk bands were legendary, like Crass and the Descendants. And I mean, there's some, I love the Dead Kennedys, but Dead Kennedys, they were on alternative tentacles, but they were distributed by a bigger distribution company because you had to be distributed. Like you could be a small label, you're gonna only put out so much product and you're only gonna be in so many places. You're limited. So it was punk rock to be on a indie label and be punk rock. Like that's what it was to be punk rock. And so the hardcore punk rock people that come from that era are like, if you're not on Cargo or if you're not on Red Eye, then you're selling out. If you go on to MCA or CBS records, but that's, that started to change. Like Green Day, and a funny coincidence is Green Day's popping right before Blink's popping, and they certainly were the predecessors for Blink. Like they were the blueprint for Blink coming on, like no doubt. It's always cool to say the Descendants were my influence, and all these old school punk rock bands were my influence, and they were, I'm sure. But Blink, certainly Green Day was certainly making a notable influence for them. And I think what was so totally cool is when Green Day had a dip in their career, Blink brings them onto that tour and generates their career by exposing them to the young crowd again, and they're viral again. Like, they're blowing it up, and then they make one of the most amazing albums of their lifetime. I mean, it's awesome. It's awesome to see how things get circular and influential for everybody, and how everybody works together. Which is interesting, because I want to talk about eventually that Dog Eat Dog album when we get to that point in the chronological of this. There's an interesting thing going on right there, which I can tell you from my perspective, what I think is happening and why the band breaks up and what they're really trying to do. There's a few things happening there. And again, it's just opinion and perspective.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff we're talking about is pretty close to factual, I think. I think it's pretty, you know, we're nailing it down to like, here it is, here's the recording, and here it is, it's in paper. You know, it's like, we've got a lot of stuff here that we can say, and then there's some things that we can say, well, based upon what I'm seeing and what I know of them, this may be what's happening.
Yeah. So Dude Ranch comes out, Damn It blows up. You know, the boys are blowing up. They're not quite at that next level that they're going to get to the next year, a couple years later on MTV and such, but it's starting, and you're starting to see that grand scale success. I'm sure that was rad for you all. As that goes into 1998, Scott leaves the band, gets kicked out of the band, however you want to look at it. I'm curious your perspective. Like, what did you think when you heard about that? Did you have any insight there? Did it surprise you?
It bummed me out, because I hate to see anybody, you know, not be part of a band. But I know when I was talking with Tom during all that time, and it was hit and miss. Like, I was seeing Tom less and less, most definitely. But during that time, when I would talk to him from time to time, it was, you know, the band's doing great, but Scott's a little bit of a liability, and, you know, he was drinking, and there was some challenges going on. And, you know, there's a couple things you got to count on as a band. You got to count on him being there and on time, and then you have to count on him being professional and at the top of his game. So I'm from what I was feeling is that wasn't entirely happening. Remember, I was talking about the SWAT Summer Winter Action Tours and those concerts?
Yeah.
So later, those same guys and other ski tour companies, and, you know, I know Blink was getting on soundtracks for the skating community and the surf community and the snowboarding community, and they were on their videotapes. That, by the way, is another thing that was really helpful. I think his name is Taylor Steele.
Taylor, yes.
Taylor Steele. And I think he was out of Encinitas, and wow, when you get on those things and you get distributed, like, you're being put on every tour bus that's going up skiing, and every skateboard crew that hangs out and watches their flip, you know, the really cool videotapes, the VHS tapes that are getting circulated at all the skate shops, and these guys are on the sound scores for it. So they're being like embedded into the fabric of what's cool. Like, that by the way, I think that was a super smart move, and I think that was just a natural move for these guys to want to be part of that community, because they were part of that community. So there, I want to say it was Mammoth, some ski concert thing in Mammoth, but it was somewhere. And Tom had told me about it, and he said, yeah, the Aquabats had played along some of these shows, and Travis, like, Scott couldn't play, and Travis popped out some quick tunes on it, and he jumped in and crushed it. And it was probably like 2 months later, Tom goes, yeah, we got a new drummer. He's really good. And I love the Aquabats. Like, I was listening to the Aqua because I was into ska music big time too, and still am. Yeah. And but, you know, the Aquabats were like the Devo of ska. They were kind of quirky and kooky and, you know, zany, and they ended up going on to do Yo Gabba Gabba, which my kids got really into watching when they were growing up. Really cool TV show. Another sidetrack. But man, what a cool gig. Anyway, so Travis is now part of Blink, and yeah, man, that guy just brought a whole nother caliber to the band, which, you know, I mean, part of the running joke for some of the community of people were like, well, these guys certainly are fun to watch, but they're not really great musicians. I don't know, man. I thought Mark was great on bass, and I thought Tom was really clever on guitar. And I heard people saying that, but I didn't think that, you know, like I thought they were really good and really clever hooks.
Yeah.
Really smart. Like pop punk was the thing. Oh, so here's the kitsch that's happening. And you were talking about the sellout concept. Okay, so you have the old school punk rock community, and I think they're the ones that are talking about, oh, they're selling out. That's a small community. The bigger community is this uprise of young, influential, record buying teenagers going into college, young adults that are into pop punk. They don't know the ethos of punk. They just know the energy of punk. And so the ethos is what keeps some of that crew down, because they want to be part of the cool crowd. And these guys are like, we love punk and we want to see you blow up, and we want to be part of that as you blow up. And I think Blink was smart enough to let that other community know, hey, we fully respect you. We're all about the music, but we're also wanting to get our music out to as many people as possible. And why shouldn't you?
Yeah.
So good for them, man. I could not be more stoked for another group along the way. Like I said, like they constantly, for me, were the underdogs. And I was so excited to constantly see them win the next battle, the next battle, and the next battle, and the next thing. And to me, it was like watching them was like watching a stand-up comedian. You know what I mean? Like, what's the next joke? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? It was just, they're fun to follow. I follow them to this day. Like, I still am excited about them. Yeah, some really cool things have happened for them along the way.
Yeah. At what point during this rise did you think like, man, they're gonna fucking blow up? Like they are hitting that next level. Like, was it Dude Ranch?
It was Dude Ranch. Damn it was a hell of a track, and it was certainly blowing it up on the radio station. And the more you heard it, the more you got excited about it. And it was bigger than San Diego. That was the first thing that when it popped, I was like, oh yeah. It wasn't Josie. Josie was cool, and Josie was a little bit more local. Like, you know, they talked about sombreros, which is a cool little Mexican restaurant. What's funny is they gave a gold record to them, and they had it up on their wall for the longest time, and then all of a sudden it was gone. And I was like, what happened to that?
Oh,
like somebody took it. I'm like, God, man, that's bad juju. Bad juju.
I've made the voyage. I've been to that sombrero that they used to hang out at all the time. It was pretty cool.
You know what's crazy, dude? Like working at Poway High School, especially in the late 90s, early 2000s, there were people that were coming from Australia, from England, doing little tours, secret tours of our campus, wanting to come into my classroom and stuff. I'm like, what's going on here? And we came to see where Blink like breathed. I'm like, what? Like, this is crazy. Like they've got the craziest following.
One thing that I've
like
always thought is,
crazy.
Yeah, and one thing that I've always thought is so rad is like Australia loves Blink and did early on. Rick DeVoe talked about that on the pod as well. He's like, shit, Australia was like the first people outside of SoCal to really take Blink in and like make it their own. Like, I just think that's rad.
I think it was after they toured out there with Pennywise, and you know, like again, a bunch of things have to happen.
Yeah.
And you know, like your wheels can't stop turning. You make a success, you can't sit there and be happy about it. You got to be the next success has already got to be in the works, right? And I think Rick was really good from what I saw. Really good with the band in terms of setting up the Taylor Steele tours and getting in with good punk rock bands. Like Pennywise they had Broham. I mean, they didn't really have anything else on the radio that was busting. You know, like Bad Religion had stuff that was busting on the radio, but you know, they had Broham and they had a following like crazy. They weren't quite like Suicidal Tendencies at dude, the craziest punk rock show I've ever been to in my life was in Long Beach at a Suicidal Tendencies show. I thought I was going to die. Like literally, like that was hardcore. And the energy that Pennywise would bring to a show was sometimes pretty hardcore. Sometimes, you know, like a little volatile. Like you're like, oh, someone going to get punched and maybe knocked out right in front of me somewhere here may happen. And for Blink to be on a volatile tour like that, and Australians, that's their nature. You know what I mean? They're like, let's do this, you know? And so their energy is that. You know who's really big in Australia too is Unwritten Law. Like The most devout following for them is probably Australia. They tour there constantly.
Wow. That's crazy, dude.
Yeah.
So
So they broke, I think, right there, and they broke here, and then they were really slow to break in the UK, from what I saw. But man, I mean, I'm sure Rick could have spoke to that much more closely, and I'm sure the band could speak to this closely because they were well aware. Like, as soon as their tour changed from them all in one stinky van to, I think the Warped Tour was another one that kind of busted them a little bit higher too, because they were starting to rise above the froth at the Warped Tour.
yeah.
And once that was happening, the buzz was big time on. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. Like, so Travis joins permanently, he's what they call the X Factor. They record Enema. Enema drops. They actually are still playing Warped Tour that summer, which is unreal. It's just so crazy to me. As amazing and as iconic as that album is. And then their lives are about to fucking change like crazy. So when that drops and it's MTV, What's My Age Again, all the small things. I mean, they are the pop punk band, one of the biggest bands in the world.
It's the Naked Factor too. They were like,
yeah, we'll get naked.
As soon as that was the thing, they're like known as the Naked Factor band. I'm like, holy shit! Like, how many more things can you guys do? It was like watching Madonna do her tricks all the way through the 80s and 90s. I was like, oh, that woman's gonna do something new that everyone's gonna buzz about. And I'm like,
yeah,
fuck it, Blink is doing it. Like, they're doing it. They're doing such smart stuff, but it's them. So people recognize it as not contrived. They recognize it as, it's part of their nature. It's part of who they are,
So when they blow up like that and they get to that level, what are you thinking? What are your students thinking? Like, is there a sense of pride around Tom and being from Poway at that time that you could see? Like, how was it?
Ooh, so here's one that happened. This is interesting. So the buzz is happening about them. They are hot on, and they're getting all kinds of all kinds of attention from MTV, and MTV's like taking them on as the new, like, the boy band thing is starting to push out, and this kind of thing is starting to push in, and so that energy is moving. And then all of a sudden, I get a call from a woman that works for MTV, and Leola Westbrook, this woman. Like, this little deal. I keep all this stuff because I had folders of stuff. And I actually hadn't seen it in years until we started talking. I'm like, I know I got that somewhere in some filing cabinet.
That's awesome.
Yeah, here it is. So the MTV thing happened. So they do a show called Coming Home. And Tom's sister, Carrie, is a senior at the school at the time. And so Tom's going to come and invite her. They were actually talking to me about the idea of, like, hey, what if we have a concert in your quad?
Oh.
Like, previously, I'm like, that would be killer. Let's do this.
Yeah.
And then they were talking about the image with the band, and the band's like, well, we'd rather have it in a place where all of San Diego kind of identify with it, like a place where we first played at. And I would have thought they would have played at Soma, but it ended up being in some strange little tiny place. I can't even remember what the name of the place was. It wasn't like Soma or Casbah or anything like that. It was some odd spot, but they were making it look like it was a Coming Home concert, right? Like, we're going to play in the little place that we played at before we just became this big band. And so Tom came onto the campus and did all these interviews and did all the, like, hey, here's where we shot people with paintballs down our street and all this other stuff. And so they do this and they interview a bunch of us, and they only use little snippets of things, right? Like tiny little snippets, because they have a story to tell. Like, it's about coming home, and it's quick, and they're anecdotal little quickie stories. There's nothing deep. And that was it for the show, right? So as I was talking with the people from MTV, they're like, oh, you got to come up and check out some of this stuff. Like, this is really fun, and the edits are really fun, and you guys got a lot of stuff to talk about with these guys. Like, we should probably do more at some point. I'm like, yeah, love this. Like, that would be great. And I, of course, I would love to have them come back and play on the campus again, because that was like one of their first gigs, was playing on our campus and playing at Soma, So, of course, I would love to have them come back. And so it was weird. This is a weird story to tell you, because I feel a little heartbroken about it afterwards, but we all kind of got duped a little bit. So the crew that worked for MTV contacts us like 3-4 months later. And they're like, hey, we're going to do a documentary about the band. So we'd love to come and do more in-depth interviews. I'm like, oh my God, this would be amazing. So let's do this, you know? Let's talk some stories about all these things that we kind of just talked about a little bit and more. And so they did this with Mike Halloran. They did this with Don from that studio that I was talking about that they recorded in. They did it with Troy. Troy worked for the San Diego Reader, and they did it with a couple other guys. And they interviewed us, and we were under the perception that this was an MTV production, right? This is an authorized production. So we signed off on everything and like gave them whatever they wanted information wise. And you're thinking, okay, they're totally behind the band, and this is all band promoted. And I'm not talking to the band at this time, so I'm not really talking to Tom and going, hey, did you know that these guys did these interviews and da 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 da? You know, like I'll only see them in passing. Like Rob Kaechele was a mutual friend of ours, and Rob had a birthday party for his daughter, and Tom was there. But you know, it's not like we're talking shop on a normal basis anymore. I mean, these guys are huge. So I may see them like once every couple years somewhere, you know, at some point, or every other year or whatever. And so at this point, I didn't talk to him about it, and we get all these interviews, and then like a year later, there's a DVD that pops out in circulation, and I saw it, and I pick it up, and it's this thing, Punk Poets, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. I want to unauthorized, and then I'm like, unauthorized. I see down at the bottom, it's like unauthorized documentary film packed with exclusive interviews. And I look at this thing, and I'm like, what the, you know, like, what's this about? So played it, and I'm like, holy shit. I was so bummed because it's a bunch of bands that aren't Blink playing in the background. It's really poor quality, like editing. It's a total, obviously unauthorized because it's not their mojo. It's not their vibe. It's not their thing. So nothing should have ever come out. I'm kind of pissed that anybody could actually do something like this. And I would have been bummed if I was the band going, look at all these people that were part of this. Like you were all part of our scene in San Diego, and now you're on an unauthorized doc.
Yeah.
I'm here to correct the record for sure, because I've never really had the opportunity to tell them about it. But like, we did not know that this was unauthorized, and did not know that this was, you know, this group that was coming in. They came in looking like they were in fact, they were the crew because they were subcontracted by MTV. They weren't actually part of MTV. They were a subcontracted film crew, and they saw an opportunity to come back and do a bigger story and do a whole thing.
And this is the Punk Poets
don't buy this.
DVD.
Don't buy this. Yeah.
Man, and I've seen that throughout the years, and you're right. Like, it's just, I remember the first time I played it, and you're like, all right, Blink documentary, and you click on it, and there's not even Blink music. You're like, what the fuck?
Yeah, and I'm in it too, and I'm like, that pisses me off. Like, you know, that's not cool, and I didn't feel like that was cool. That would be like me taking this cassette from the band and pressing some vinyl on it and popping it out there if it's something that they don't want out there. You know, that's not cool. You can't do that with it.
Damn. Yeah, I'm curious, you know, at that time you said you kind of lost touch with the band a little bit, but I mean, was it just every other year, every couple years? Was that the last time you had talked to the band, really? I mean, since then?
They were living on a whole nother planet at this point. Like it's crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you'll see, here's a couple things. Okay, so right before they busted MTV Style, the Mark, I just found this packet. Let me grab it here. Where is it? Oh, there it is. Mark is managing a band named River Phoenix, right? So they're on Drive Through Records, and they got this really cool promo thing.
Nice.
It's early, right? And it's like management, Mark Hoppus. So Mark's living at his mom's and managing the band and doing everything right out of his bedroom, I'm sure, because this is the days of fax machines, right? So we're faxing stuff back and forth to each other, and he wants to get River Phoenix to play in our quad because it was a legendary thing to do. Like at this point, we're having loads of bands. Oh my God, I totally forgot about this one thing. Let's back up. Early. I had this concept. I was like, let's do a Poway Palooza. Let's get a bunch of bands to play at the end of the school year in our stadium and make it a big show, make it like a festival show. And Tom's like, we want to headline that. I'm like, well, it would be great if we could get Unwritten Law to headline it. And he's like, let me talk to him. And then he talked to them and he's like, yeah, they can't do a show announced because they have a contract with Soma. Like if you play within 2 months, I think ish, of a gig that you have booked at Soma, you can't play anywhere else in San Diego within 100 miles or something like that. Something like that. So I was like, man, if we're going to take the risk, we did it under the moniker. This is how I got it passed by the school board, by the way. We did it under Amnesty International. We had an Amnesty International club. So I was like, why don't we have spoken word by the Amnesty International folks in between the bands and have bands play, and then we could do it as an Amnesty International sponsored. I mean, it was for good reason, you know what I mean? Like we were doing some fun stuff, and so Tom, we had it. We had shirts made up. We had Blink-1 on it. We had Loophole, I think was one of the bands. Hot Rod Lincoln, a bunch of ska bands, Unsteady, some other really cool ska bands, and a couple other punk rock bands. And they were all on the shirt, and then it rained out.
Oh no.
And you can't just rebook it in our stadium because our stadium is booked like for all kinds of things. So I'm like,
damn
maybe
it.
Maybe next year we'll do it. And then the momentum got lost. But we made shirts.
Oh man, that would have been rad.
That'd been rad. So anyway, so we had all this stuff going on, and let's fast forward. This is December 98, January 99. This is the last band I had playing the quad before I stopped being the ASB director there. So that we had a band contract. Let me pull out some stuff. Oh, we have like, this is cool for anybody that likes River Phoenix and River Phoenix.
Oh, rad
so
logo.
We had him playing our quad. Like that's me and the dude from River Phoenix, and then that's Mark because he's
that's cool, here. Man.
Yeah, he's a cool dude.
And just on the verge, what I love about little pictures and snapshots like that, they haven't blown up yet. And his life is like 5 months away from completely changing forever right there, which is crazy.
Yeah. And so he's doing their whole band management. Like he's sending us their set list and their stage plot, and like in the fax that he's sending, that's Mark's signature.
Yeah, signed by Mark. Wow.
Little Mark signature.
That's awesome, dude. Holy
shit. So he said, Robert, here's the updated input list and stage plot for River Phoenix. Also, thanks so much for your suggestion about the Snow Trip show. Oh,
interesting.
What the hell? There's something. That's awesome. Okay, so there's proof of the Snow Trip shows.
Yeah.
Right there in that whole thing. Booyah. So we're looking into that right now, and I will be talking with you today about that later on this afternoon. Let me know if you need anything else. Thanks again. And then he sent me another one, and he said, like, here's this contract I'll sign. Go ahead and hire your own sound production as we have none. Thank God he did that. I was like, Mark, you remember when you guys first played? You didn't do that. Yeah. And then so he said, thanks so much. I will talk to you soon. Oh, and I know of another band that you should check out if possible for a lunch show. They're called the Deviants, and they're from Hermosa Beach. I have a CD. I'll send you later. Check it out. And we actually ended up having the Deviants play in our. We used to do these little promos in K99. So we had them in K99. So River Phoenix was the last in our quad, and the Deviants were the last in our little theater. And and what was I going to grab here for you? Was there? Yeah, I think that was it. I was getting to something for you there, though. Oh, yeah. So on the fax is like his address, right? Like he was faxing stuff from his home address, which I think his mom still lives there, so I don't want to show that address because that would be weird for people that are like really crazy about him. But you know, it's so rad that he's just so homegrown about it. Like he was busy playing video games and, you know, his band, and then making these guys pop. And, you know, then they finally got signed to a bigger deal and had to change their name to Phoenix TX because the River Phoenix group was like, can't have that name.
Right.
Oh, so here's what I was going to get to. This is awesome. This is a segue. So, two guys, Rick Savage and Chris Georgian.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So both of these guys are in my ASB class. They're both students of mine. So let me tell you about Rick. Rick is a huge promoter and lover of Green Day and everything punk rock and all the local Poway punk bands. And he would be an amazing guy to talk to because he then went on to be a 91X DJ, K-Rock DJ. He worked at Apple Music. He did the first, like the not Vimeo, but
Vine?
Vivo.
Oh.
You know, like when bands started, you know, because there was like a video in circulation from my account and someone else's account and someone else's account of a Blink, all the small things. And some of them are low grade and they're getting wrong numbers. And so Vivo came in and said, we're getting rid of everyone's everything and we're going to put out the only one from the band and regulate it. And then they're going to get monetary, you know, funding back on it, you know, that whole thing. So anyway, Rick was part of that, but Rick would be the guy that would press the record button at these shows. And so like River Phoenix, we ended up doing a live at Poway High, River Phoenix, you know, DVD or CD of that show.
Damn.
Like on the back, it's like, why do we have Phoebe Cates? Oh, they had a song called Phoebe Cates. So there was a Phoebe Cates picture we put in there. And then if you could see this, oh man, it's got a lot of glare. Let's see if I can pop this out. This is really hilarious. So Rick would be the one recording this stuff. And can you see all that?
It's tough, but I can make it out a little bit.
Yeah, so that's the band and that's all of us. Oh, that's funny. That's Mark in the glasses.
Wow.
That's me doing a chagrin. Silly.
That's crazy. That'd be a cool picture to post like on the pod Instagram.
Well, I'll get it to you somehow. We got probably a better quality copy than that one, which is funny. So Rick would do these recordings and he started, you know, I got him a job working with this guy, Ephraim Nunez, who was like Pro Sounds. And so he was local DJing and, you know, getting his chops going and getting really excited about the industry. And I'm proud of Rick. Like he's gone on to be really successful and do really cool things. And he did some stuff with Blink. Well, here's another dude. So another one of my students was wanting to, you know, like Mark was hiring out, I wouldn't say hiring out, but soliciting students to be like, hey, you guys want to sell a bunch of these boxes of CDs to all your friends and we'll give you a cut. And so these guys were taking boxes of them and selling them. And Chris ended up becoming buddies with Mark a little bit and selling some of these and getting Mark into the movie theaters because he worked at a movie theater and playing video games with him at his house. And soon, and I'm not here. I saw some interview with Chris talking about like how he started up, and I never heard this story. And I'm like, don't you remember like we brought River Phoenix to the school and then you started hanging out with Mark a little bit after all that stuff. So that's where that kind of started.
Okay.
And Chris, God bless him, he's a great guy, has gone on to do a lot of really great stuff with the band and do a lot of fun work with them. And from what I've seen, and I've seen Chris a number of different times, we've done some backstage stuff and hung out and been silly. And he's a great guy. So he was part of I think the management crew with Rick. And then
I
forget the guy that owns the label and ran management for Green Day.
I don't know. No.
It's a guy from San Diego.
Okay.
And whatever management company that was, Chris went on to work with them too. And so he's done a lot of great stuff and has always been friends with Carrie DeLong, Tom's sister. And I don't know where all their relationships are now, but it was interesting to see.
Yeah.
Started right there at our little quad gig. So that was, you know.
Yeah, I think they're still friends with him to this day because I see him like in their pictures and such.
Yeah, as he should be. So, you know, he's done a lot. Listen, a lot of people have given up a lot of their life and energy to get behind Blink and push them
Yeah.
and promote them and you know, really do some great stuff for them. And watching that again just makes me super stoked and proud to be from Poway. You know, I'm not from Poway, but from San Diego, and work at Poway for, I'm going on 30 years now, which is ridiculous.
Wow. Yeah. When they came back for those documentaries, like, were they still the same people to you, or did you feel that they had changed or were any different? Like, how did they seem to you?
Grounded and super cool and down to earth. And I mean, I just, you know, I just love Tom. So I just want to grab his face and be like, it's so free, dude. And it's funny because after that little coming home show, he and I were in the back alley after the show, and he's like, Rob, you got to meet my my girlfriend. And it was like the girl that, you know, he married. And oh, if she had a good girlfriend, if she had a cool girlfriend, you should be dating her too. And I'm like, that'd be weird. But it was like, oh man, it was just so, he's just such a freaking love guy, man. He's a guy that you just love to see get successful. And I know that, you know, people are going to have their ins and outs with the band from here or there, because not everyone can be like at the top of their love game every day, and probably get tired of like some of the fandom and some of the craziness and some of the redundancy. And, you know, everybody has a bad day from now and then, but man, on a consistent basis, like guys that I'm sure you follow some of their stuff that, like, even right now as they're touring. I just saw a little thing pop up on my social media the other day, and it was Tom popping on something about Devo, and he's doing his little dance and doing his little thing. I'm like,
yeah, just goofy Tom.
Yeah, you just want to be like, dude, come over for a barbecue and let's hang out and be goofy and have fun.
Do you guys know this song? Who is this? I'll care for you and I'll treat you nice. Take you out to nice dinners. I'm trying to warm up with my friends. We're grown men. We're grown. Dancing like this in a dressing room.
You know, and that's I love those guys, and that they still have that energy.
Yeah.
Like they still do that. Like me and my buddies still do that. We still do that stuff too. So I'm like, they're right there with us. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
grooving with it.
Yeah. So fast forwarding just a little bit, because I'm curious to get your thoughts. You know, when they break up for that first time, you know, do you remember getting that news? Like, were you bummed about it? Did you see it coming? Like, did it surprise you?
The first time?
Yeah.
The first time, no, but I could see why tensions could rise. You know, like Boxcar Racer is probably going to add tension to a band. Anytime you take off with a band and form a band, and everybody does side bands, but they don't always bring the whole band into it except for one guy. So that was
right.
That's gotta add some tension. You know, and Mark's a proud guy, so he's probably not feeling super comfy about that. So yeah, you could see that coming on, and then they do Plus 44, and then so Travis is like the silent partner in all this stuff all the way through. Travis, man, are you the one really stirring the pot? What's going on here, dude?
How did you feel about like Boxcar and Angels and Plus 44? I'm just curious because you've shown me some pictures. Like, you have an extensive vinyl collection of these dudes. Like, you still keep up with them to this day, which I think is so rad.
Totally. Yeah, like I've got all their, like, if you go look at their records, like, you know, the Angels and Airwaves records, like,
oh my gosh,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, you're up to date, like new singles and shit.
Like, these are all really fun. Boom, boom, boom. That last level, Angry Samoan. Yeah. That's alphabetically, that was what was next.
That's funny.
Angels and Airwaves and Angry Samoans. There you go. Yeah, so, you know, they've got all kinds of little side project things. Like Boxcar Racer's got that. Travis does that little Yellow Wolf thing. Mm-hmm. You know, Blink has this first single. They split with Iconoclast, which is kind of a cool thing to do. Like, it was very punk rock to split a single with a band. And actually, so I produced a single for Spray Allen, which is Eric Wilson and Wade Yeoman from Unwritten Law. I produced a single for them. It's called What Love Is, and it was a Dead Boys 1977 track. And so on the A side, it's that. And on the B side, it's a local all-girl punk band called the Fluorescents. Now they're called the Inflorescents, but they were the Fluorescents We recorded them and a song called We Are the One. And it was an original Avengers song done in 77 by a girl San Francisco punk band. So they did, you know, like we're still doing the same thing, like this whole split single that thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a pretty rare vinyl that came out like June 1994.
Yeah, right. And then there's this, you know, the Uranus ones.
Oh, that's rad. I love how he's signing it like PHS, like a Poway inscription. That's pretty unique, dude.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, like he's from Poway. That's cool. Well, because he is.
Yeah.
What's this action? I don't know what that was. It was like some kind of.
Oh, that's like a backstage pass.
Yeah, that's cool. So I had that, and we had this.
Lemmings.
Lemmings. I don't know how well circulated this is, but it's a 45 of all the small things.
Okay. I don't have that. I don't know how rare it is, but I know I don't have that in my collection. That's pretty rad.
I think it's a promo only type thing. Yeah, and you know, like all the Blink singles. So there's like this action, picture disc.
Man, dude, disc. you have like every one.
I think so. I'm pretty avid about collecting stuff. So Miss You, Always, both of these guys. This is a weird one. This is like from Take Off Your Pants, I think.
Yeah, it's the bonus tracks.
Yeah. So there's all that action. And then, yeah, plus 44. Let's see. Yeah, and all the other records, all the LPs. I got all the crazy LPs, which is really cool and fun. So how do I feel about their side projects? You know, Angels and Airwaves, I'm stoked. I love them. I felt, okay, so this is an interesting, if we start talking about perspective of how we see the band starting to do their thing. When Tom leaves and he does Angels and Airwaves, I can hear the synth and the almost like a sound score production type of thing going on. And so when he takes off and starts to do that music, I'm like, wow, this is what would be an evolution of Blink. But if you evolve to that with Blink, you're not going to be able to come back, right? So I get probably where the tension may be, where this side project stuff is not going to stay true to what they may want for the legacy of Blink, right? So this is my opinion. So as I'm listening to this, I'm like, wow, this is a brilliant side project. And then moving forward, you know, like the thing happens with Travis, and then they get back together, and then they make the big announcement. And what's the next record right there? What are they doing?
Neighborhoods.
Yeah. So they do Neighborhoods, and on Neighborhoods, you can start to hear a little bit of that Angels and Airwaves influence, a little bit of keyboard, a little bit of just different vibe, but man, it's really good. Like, to me, that is a proper evolution of Blink. Like, that sounded really good.
Yep.
And then I think the following year or two, they did the Dog Eat Dog EP.
Yep.
Now, I think that was a bad move, but that's just me in my opinion. But I'm glad they didn't make it an official record. They made it an EP. So to me, it's not them really making claim to it. And I hear two things happening there. One, there's a song where there's a lot of synth, and there's a guy that comes in and raps on it. It's about a girl.
Yeah, that's the one with Yellow Wolf.
Yeah. So no thanks. Like, to me, that was like, that's a sellout for me. To me, that was like, you know, if you look at the pop formula of what was happening at the time, it was very popular to have a rap artist get on your pop song and, you know, do a little Justin Bieber rap with, you know, Ludacris or whatever is going on. You know, I mean, like, it was just, sorry, I don't want to go negative here, but this is my opinion. Like, I felt like, oh, don't do that. It was like I used to love Rush.
Yeah.
3-piece band, great band. And then they did the song called Roll the Bones, and they always integrated in synth into their stuff magically. Like, they were amazing musicians. But then they had this dude rap on Roll the Bones, and I'm like, oh.
It can be too much, and you're not alone in that sentiment. Like, a lot of the fan base like fucking hated that. There's YouTube versions of it where people have removed the rap.
As you should, because I've listened to it again. I'm like, it doesn't feel. So it would have been good to have done that as a different name project, the Dog Eat Dog sessions, I think. And then they did an acoustic song of Boxing Day, which you know, if you do anything about Christmas, you can get away with anything. So, you know what I mean? So Boxing Day was like almost a semi-Christmas song. And when I heard that one, I'm like, it reminds me of Good Riddance, Time of Your Life from Green Day. They're trying an acoustic ballad thing. And to me, that whole EP was like, let's test some stuff out. Now, I don't know this, but I'm going to perceive something. They break up again soon after, and there's tensions about Tom wanting to record everything in San Diego and them wanting to record everything in LA, and them, and the tension mounts. And I feel like that Dog Eat Dog thing had a lot of Angels and Airwaves influence in it. And probably, I'm guessing the rest of the band didn't want to do that. So for many reasons, which is up to the band to decide, but we're watching this from the outside. I'm like, here they go again. They're going to break up again. You know what happened right about that time too? And I'm an electronic artist guy. Like, I do remixes. I've done a remix of David Bowie, The Police, Air, Sinead O'Connor, a bunch of artists I've done. And I just did one for Love and Rockets, which shamelessly promote them because I love Love and Rockets. And I produced a bunch of music with the bass player, David J., and I managed him for a while. That's a whole nother story, but we won't get into it. But anyway, so myself and Scott Kirkland, who's my buddy from Crystal Method, he's doing a remix of So Live. I'm doing a remix of So Live, and the band got a hold of it, and they're putting it out next year. This is the first time I'm announcing this one out. It was just kind of fun and cool. They're putting it out next year, summer, July, and putting out a special edition 12-inch and doing some cool releases with it.
Oh, rad.
So I come from like a disco funk house thing, and Scott comes from his breakbeat eclectic kind of thing. And so both of us together doing two separate 12-inch mixes. We're approaching different artists with this. So we do this. We're doing it for them. So coming from that electronic music perspective, I always want to do remixes for bands that I love. And so when I watched Blink get together with Stevie Aoki on something, again, I'm going to put a little sour patch on this one again for something. I'm like, first of all, coming from the DJ community, Stevie Aoki to me sold out. Like, he's not, I've seen videos of him not legitimately DJing. Like, stuff's changed. The mix is going on the track and he's not there doing it. I'm like, ooh.
I just like presses play.
He's just throwing cakes at people. I'm like, oh. But he's got a great promotion team, and he and DJ AM were part of the BPM magazine push. And there's another connection with Travis, because like at the time, right before Travis did that whole drummer thing with AM, Tommy Lee was doing it earlier and drumming with a bunch of different DJs. And I was really heavy in the DJ scene at that time, and touring and doing a bunch of other things, and that was a hot ticket. Like, Tommy Lee and the drum thing, and then Travis kind of took off it with AM, and that was legit. Like, that was a really cool production.
I loved that stuff.
Oh yeah, and AM is a legit DJ. Like, he does it, but Steve Aoki is not. So Steve's got a studio guy that he works with too, and I don't know where he's at now with stuff, but he definitely knows. I mean, his dad is Benny Hanna. Have you ever been to Benny Hanna's?
I haven't. No, I didn't know that. No, I'm learning so much about Steve Aoki.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a promotion team behind him that people take out. And plus, he was there in LA doing a bunch of stuff. I can tell you where he started. He started at a place called Cinespace with a friend of mine, Kim Rousel, and she helped build him and his local community thing. And there's just a lot of interesting little inside routes on this whole thing. Anyway, I digress. So coming back into this, I watched them get together with Stevie Aoki. I think he did a remix of one of their tracks. I'm like, that sounds really crappy. I wasn't into it. And I just feel like Blink's tracks don't lend themselves to being a house music track or an EDM track, or, you know what I mean? I was backstage talking with my friend Greg, who is the lead singer from Cigarettes After Sex. I don't know if you ever heard of them. Mm-hmm. Such a great band. And they sold out the Greek, and we were at the show at the Greek, and we were back there talking to him. And I'm like, I'm making a pitch. I'm like, hey, Scott and I from Crystal Method, we could do a remix of some of your tracks, and we could do this, this, and this. And he's like, the reason why I don't do remixes of any of our tracks is when someone listens to Cigarettes After Sex, I want it to be timeless. They don't know if it came from the 80s, the 90s, 2000s, now, some other era. it's just timeless. And our imagery is timeless, and our pitch is timeless. I'm like, you are genius, dude. Like, I still want to do a remix for you. but I can totally appreciate what he's doing. And I'm like, that makes sense. And for me, remove Dog Eat Dog and keep Blink on exactly the profile of what they're doing without any electronic remixes. And I'm like, they're timeless. They are a timeless pop punk band. Timeless. And that's why it transcends into this next generation. And this next generation, I bet if you check out the audience and all their shows, I'm like, there's a bunch of high schoolers still totally identifying with their coming of age music.
Oh yeah.
And so it's timeless, you know, like that is their gift. And if I was crafting any part of that on their marketing team, I'd be like, let's try to find a way to get rid of Dog Eat Dog and the Stevie Aoki mix and that, you know, and just, you know, and any of these little side projects, make them side projects. Like, you know, Travis doing that Yellow Wolf thing, awesome. Travis does, oh, this is another fun one. Travis does this little side project with Tim Armstrong, right? The Transplants.
Yeah, I dig the Transplants for sure.
Oh, that they had that one song that was on commercials and it was killer. But you got Tim Armstrong behind that machine, and that's you know Tim Armstrong. You know Tim Armstrong.
Oh yeah, Rancid, Operation Ivy, legend.
Legend. And he's got that underling band, the Interrupters, and those guys would play music for him, and he did a song a day. I think it was pre-COVID. He did a song a day, a new song every single day, and posted it onto the internet, like 365 songs.
That's crazy.
Oh my God. Like, talk about a dude that is like unbelievable. That's Tim Armstrong. So now you've got Travis working in with him with the Transplants. And I'm like, Tim Armstrong is like the legit punk rock Damien Albarn, like the Gorillaz project. Like, now that's where these little side projects should go. Like, Tim Armstrong's authentically genius about the projects that he does, because they're just so good and they're so real, and Tim Armstrong is like the punk rock Damien Albarn.
How did you feel? Because obviously, like, your ties are more with Tom. How did you feel when they break up that second time and then they bring in Matt Skiba, you know, for those 3 albums?
Was it 3 albums? I thought it was 2 albums.
Well, I count the deluxe as one, but yeah, Cali Deluxe and 9.
Okay, yeah. You know, God bless them. I like Alkaline Trio. I think they're great. I think it's again a mistake to make that project a Blink project. I think they should have called it something else, like their Plus 44 project. To me, that was like another Plus 44 project. So they could have been called something else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Blink 22, Plus 44, call them Skiba 22 or something. You know what I mean? I don't know.
I mean, a lot of people felt that way. So you're not alone there. I'm just always curious, and especially given your ties to Tom. You've known the dude since he was a little, like, high schooler essentially. So it's crazy. Yeah,
but I wish I hung out with him every day ever since, but we haven't. So you know what I mean? Like, I've seen him in some weird passing moments, and some of the weird passing moments. Man, he was at a Muse show watching Muse, and he was at the sound desk, and I was, you know, I had a few drinks going on, and so I was like, hey, what's up, Tom? He's like, oh, I'm watching the show. I'm like, all right, do your thing. So we were doing our thing, you know, like we come into passing a couple different times, and honestly, that was right after that crappy documentary came out, and in my heart of hearts, I had a little like, oh God, I feel horrible about that thing popping out. So like, what's gone on with these guys? Are they cool with it? I know they're not cool with it. I wouldn't be. But again, for the record, we had nothing to do with it. We thought we were talking to people from MTV about the whole thing, which which has to go down on record, which I'm authentically sorry about. I'm sure I talked with Mike Halloran like a little bit ago, and Mike got involved in that and didn't know about it. So did other people, and they didn't know that it wasn't authorized. So it is what it is.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then, you know what's interesting? I had some students a while back do a really cool film called Reckless Abandon. And what they did was they re-sang the Blink-182 songs, made a sound score out of it, and did a musical play, like Across the Universe. Remember when Across the Universe came out? It was a movie,
Yeah.
and it put together all these Beatles songs and created a story, and that was the movie, almost like a musical. So these students of mine did Reckless Abandon, and it was all these Blink-182 songs laced together and made into a musical and a high school theatrical film.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was super cool. So I talked to Carrie DeLong about it, and she's like, "Oh, I'll get it to Tom and come on in and talk to him." And then I came on over to he had Macbeth at the time, and he had I think it was Angels and Airways had their like rehearsal studio in the back end of this warehouse that was there at Macbeth.
Yeah.
Tom was out in front, and he's on the phone, and he had just been going through some of his own challenges of, you know, meds and drinking or whatever was going on. And, you know, I mean, I was going to be like, hey, and I didn't want to interrupt him. And he was busy off doing his own thing. And I go into the warehouse and give the stuff to Carrie. And she's like, well, I'm going to get Tom in here. And then Tom couldn't come in there. And then I see Tom's wife and I say hi to her. And, you know, I don't know, like we had some really kind of interrupted passings as of, a ways back. But, again, it's like he's just moved into this space. Like we can't go back to 1993, 94, 95 and be like, hey, how's it going? Right. Let's work together and do some fun stuff. Like that dude's like aliens exist. I think he's an alien. I think he's probably he's part of another freaking planet. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, legitimately. Like he's that huge. Mark is that huge. Travis is obviously that huge. They're just, to me, it's kind of outer worldly. When you get that big, people that are your friends sometimes hook on as friends, and they're not really friends. They're kind of, just in it for the like, wow, you're a star, so I want to ride this pony with you. And, it's hard for guys like that to navigate the community of friendships and people that care about them. I mean, I care about them, but I'm not close to them anymore. So we all just talk about them in such love and admiration. And it was nice to have a part in that early beginning. But what did that look like, and what did that actually become? I'm kind of like Mike Halloran in a way. Like we like putting people together and then letting them ride, and I've thought it to myself numerous times, like before Rick came along, Tom said to me at one point, he's like, do you ever think about managing someone? We need a manager. And I'm like, yeah. And again, I'm looking at that box of 12 cassettes of these other bands, and I'm like,
yeah,
I just got a good job. Like, I'm not going to give this job up. You know what I mean?
Right.
Oh my God. And back then he was talking about the show that he was going to do, and they brought a goat on stage at Soma, and I went out to his show and saw his show. These guys did the craziest stuff. Here's another little side story. Tom told me this. Is this true or not? I would imagine it was. He was living in an apartment with some friends in Escondido, and for like a little party platter, they had a toilet that was in one of the rooms there that was clean, I'm guessing, I'm hoping, but it was not part of it wasn't part of the plumbing. It was just sitting out on its own like furniture. And they would put like bean dip in it and make it like a chip dip.
Oh my God.
He's ever tell me stuff like that. And I'm like, you bring a goat on stage and you would do the stupidest, funniest stuff. And like I think as these guys just continue to evolve and tell their jokes, it was like part of them, like part of them doing what they do. And it's just, what a great stand-up.
Yeah, I mean, to me, Blink is just like, it's a good time. Like when I think about Blink, it's just fun. Getting into
their sad songs, and then they got their fun songs. Like I'm listening, like before we did this, got together and talked about this, I was listening to them on my bike ride, and I'm listening to their music again, and I'm like just channeling all the songs through my head. I'm like, another fun one, another happy one, another fun one, another great hook, another great guitar hook, and just great melodies. And then, oh, here's their sad song, and here's another sad song, and oh, here's more fun stuff. And so they just knew how to put it together. You know what I mean? They knew how to make the sad ones count, but they didn't sit on them too long, and they make all the other ones really fun,
Right. Yeah, I'm curious to get your thoughts, and then I'm going to get you out of here on some rapid fire. My voice is shot. I apologize. I'm going to lose my voice. With Tom back in the band now, it's really cool how everything has come full circle. But when you heard that was happening, you've heard some of the new stuff. Like, were you stoked? Did it just seem like the right point in time and the universe were just like realigning?
100%. Yeah. I mean, that edging song when it came out, I was like, oh my God, that is a
Yeah.
brilliant hook. It's so good. Their energy together is contagious. I'm like, yes, this is really good. Like, if you're gonna come back together, this is how you do it.
Yep.
And then One More Time's good. I mean, it makes sense you couldn't write a better song, to tell a better story, to promote, and they're promoting, and it's amazing. Like, it's legit. It feels real. I think the way they've handled everything has looked really, really good. Their live shows, their connection of honesty to people. I've heard a couple of the other songs that are out, and I'm like, those are damn good too. I just got a little email. I think I ordered, like, each one of them had like a limited record, different color, and some shirts and stuff like that, like a year ago. I think I pre-ordered that stuff like a year ago, and it's finally coming. I just got a note that it's coming in the mail in a couple days. That's cool. So, but anyway, yeah, I can't wait to hear the rest of the album. I think what they're doing right now is exactly what they should be doing. So remove Dog Eat Dog and Stevie Aoki, and you're good. Forcing it. Well, and let me do a remix, not of that. I would love to do a remix of actually an Angels and Airwaves track. I think that would be brilliant.
That'd be cool. Yeah, that would be.
The soundtrack of that, in fact, let me and Scott get a hold of that from my buddy from Crystal Method. I go, we'll take it into his studio and just make it crazy.
Just get crazy with it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That'd be interesting. All right, dude. I think I'm gonna get you out of here on some rapid fire, man. Appreciate your time. This has been fucking awesome, dude. Like, I really enjoyed it, and I learned a lot of shit from you for sure. Awesome. I like to close out with just a couple rapid fire questions. So off the top, like, what's your favorite Blink album of all time?
Definitely Enema of the State.
Okay.
From start to finish, it's an anthem. It's kind of like Beastie Boys' License to Ill. You can put it on at any party and just kill it.
Yeah. Favorite Blink song of all time?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I would go. Nah, I can't do something silly. I would go with Damn It. I just still feel like Damn It is just such a killer song.
Yeah.
I love Josie too. Josie's really fun. And it's got a Poway thing for me, but yeah, I would say Damn It.
Okay.
Rock Show's a great track. Like, what a hook. Like,
oh yeah. I'm curious, like, advice for, I guess, like, upcoming bands.
Let me back up real quick.
Sure.
My favorite band of all time is actually The Cure, all time.
Oh, okay.
And when they did that collaboration with Robert Smith, I was like, oh, dude.
Yeah, all of this.
Brilliant move, because Robert Smith was at a lull in his career, and he was doing like one-offs with a lot of different bands. Blink pulled him in, and I don't know how that one happened.
Yeah.
In fact, I was at a barbecue at Rob Machado's house, and Tom was there, and he was telling me, like, hey, we got together with Robert Smith from The Cure. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Like, seriously? That's amazing. So, to be honest, that was my favorite stuff, actually, that. But, yeah.
Okay. And obviously, like, they're huge fans of The Cure as well. So that was like working with their hero, which is crazy.
Oh, so crazy. Like, him and Robert Smith and Paul McCartney, I'd probably I'd have to wear some Depends when I'm meeting them. But everybody else, it's like awesome. I love bands, and I love talking shop and music with bands, and I love hanging out with bands and being with people. But yeah, those two guys, oh my goodness, they're godlike.
Yeah. I'm curious, like, I've got a lot of listeners who are musicians or, have bands, upcoming bands. I'm curious, like, what advice do you have for like an upcoming band that's trying to make it? You've seen bands like Blink blow up. You've seen others fizzle out. Like, what's your perspective on like what it takes?
Well, what's interesting is I have bands coming through Poway High School all the time. We're working with a few right now. Worked with All Star Weekend and turned them over to the guy who runs Drive Through Records, and he got them on Hollywood Records, and they became All Star Weekend. They were Outer Space Politicians to begin with, and then they started touring with Selena Gomez and all these other things. The same advice I gave them is the advice I would give anybody. Stay humble, work incredibly hard, be tenacious, don't take no for answers, stay true to your craft. If a label or some producer's coming in and saying, we want this sound, if it doesn't feel right, then it's not right. Stay true to what you feel is your hook, your vibe, your feel, because you're going to have to play that stuff over and over and over and over and over again and still love it. So, you know, you gotta live and breathe it, because on your 150th show of the year and you're playing to a crowd of 5 people that showed up at some random bar, if you can play like it's a stadium, you're killing it. Like that is the band I would get behind every time. Kaiser Chiefs did that. They came and played at the Belly Up in San Diego, and there was me and 20 other people that showed up, and they played the Belly Up, which is a small little venue, like it was Wembley Stadium. Wow. And I'm like, I will love you guys forever. Like, I love bands like that do stuff like that.
Yeah, that's rad. I love that answer. That's really rad. Okay, final one. This is my own little question I like to ask. House is on fire. Everybody's safe, family safe, pets, kids, everybody's safe. You can grab one item. What are you grabbing and why?
I'm grabbing a hose so I can protect everything and put out the fire.
That's the best answer I've ever got.
Hey, there you go. Yeah, because man, I would lose my shit if I lost my music. So, dude, the one.
It's tough.
I couldn't pull. I would just pull all the pictures of my kid. Well, I got it all on my phone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whoa. Let's not think about that. Let's think about like the best thing that would happen ever if Blink came and played at Poway High School.
That'd be sick.
Because we should have that happen, right? That should happen. Come do a surprise gig. Yeah, like how would we promote it? That's what I want to
do. That'd be gnarly. I'd fly out for that. If they
Mark,
if Tom, they show up back at your quad, I'll fly out for that and chill and watch that. That'd be rad.
That was one of their earliest gigs, and I think they should be like, you know, hey, let's round it off. Like, you know, when they come in on canes and a wheelchair, I'm ready. I'm about ready to retire from there. So, I mean, not exactly soon. I shouldn't say that, but my son goes to high school there, and so once he graduates,
damn.
My days are numbered, because so now I teach film and audio production, broadcast journalism, and sound production engineering. So we record bands. I teach students how to DJ. I had Z-Trip, who's LL Cool J's DJ. I had him in there doing demos for my students. We've crushed it. We've had bands in there. My buddy David J and some other artists like from Social Distortion and Jane's Addiction have come through. So we've had some killer stuff come through our studio and do some really amazing work.
That's awesome, dude. Like you've done some cool shit for that school, dude. That's rad.
Yeah, and it would be rad to have the band come in and do like a little KCRW recording in at our studio.
There you go. Now you're shooting big.
And we have a songwriters club. Like those guys play acoustic guitar and jam and write songs all day long in my classroom. Like, wouldn't it be rad if Tom popped his head in and was like, let's jam a song. Let's do this.
Yeah, that would be. Well, maybe he or Carrie or somebody will listen and the seed will be planted. I'm rooting for you. I'll try my best. All right, dude. Well, man, this was such a pleasure. Like I said, appreciate your time, Rob. You got anything else you want to say to the listeners before we wrap up?
No, I would just say this, like, what if you're going to get behind a band, 100% stamp of approval, like what a great band to get behind. They're fun. They're fun loving. They're good to their fans from what I've seen. And I'm just stoked that we've got really good music that's popping out from them still. So this is really exciting.
Yeah. 31 years later.
They're great guys. So it's like, next time I see Tom, I'd love to hug him and be like, dude, what a long journey you've had, man. This is awesome.
It's been 30 years, like damn near to the month where he first walked into your office. It's crazy.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's true. What a trip.
It's crazy, dude. All right, man. Well, man, I appreciate your time, dude. This was sick. There you have it. Rob Kaechele, Poway High representing, dude. Love it. Thanks, man.
All right. Cheers.